Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Last time we were learning about strength and resilience from lions and elephants and even honeybees.
That's right. It was fascinating to learn about
But this time we're going to be tackling something completely
a
different.
different kind of wilderness.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at the often tricky terrain of saying no.
Oh, yeah. That is tricky. It's a real skill.
And, we all want to be helpful and supportive, but sometimes saying yes just leaves us feeling drained and just overwhelmed.
You're absolutely right. And it's really all about recognizing that no isn't a rejection of the person or the request itself, but it's really about saying yes to your own needs and priorities.
I like that.
So it's a form of self-care, really.
That's a really helpful way to think about it.
Just like putting on your own oxygen mask, before you help others.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So why is it that no can feel like such a loaded word? What's going on in our brains when we feel that pressure to say yes, even when our gut is screaming no?
Well, it really comes down to our deep-seated need for connection and belonging as humans. We're social creatures,
Hmm.
and we are wired to seek approval and avoid conflict.
Yeah.
So saying no can sometimes trigger fears of disappointing others or damaging relationships or even facing judgment.
I know that I have definitely felt that fear of being seen as selfish or uncaring when I've tried to set boundaries.
Oh, for sure. It's an extremely common experience.
Yeah.
It's really important to normalize those feelings.
Hmm.
But you know what? People who genuinely value you and respect you, they'll understand and appreciate your need to prioritize your well-being.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and understanding, and not on one person constantly sacrificing their needs for the other.
Right. And when we say yes to everything, we're actually saying no to ourselves, to
Oh,
our goals,
I like
the
it.
things that bring us joy and fulfillment.
It's that flip side to the coin that
Exactly.
we forget about.
Each yes is a no to something else.
Yeah. Which brings us to the cost of these unnecessary yeses.
Mm-hmm.
What are we really sacrificing when we overcommit and spread ourselves too thin?
Well, aside from the obvious time crunch and potential burnout,
Right.
we are sacrificing our energy, our focus, even our creativity.
Yeah.
It's like running a marathon
Wow.
while carrying a really heavy backpack.
Yeah.
You might get to the finish line,
Yeah.
but you'll be exhausted and depleted.
And let's be honest, when we're running on fumes, we're not showing up as our best selves in any area of our lives.
Absolutely.
We're irritable, we're stressed, we're less productive.
It's like you're trying to pour from an empty cup.
Oh, yeah.
You can't give what you don't have.
So true.
And that's why it's so important to set boundaries
Yes.
and prioritize our well-being for ourselves and for the people we care about and for the quality of our work.
So to reemphasize the key takeaway for everyone listening is that saying no is not selfish.
Yeah.
It's an act of self-preservation, and it allows us to show up more fully for the things that matter most.
Exactly. It's not about becoming a hermit and saying no to everything.
Right.
It's about being more intentional with our yeses
Yes.
to make sure they align with our values, our goals, and our overall well-being.
So let's get practical.
Yeah.
What's a good starting point for someone who is maybe feeling a little overwhelmed and wants to reclaim their time and energy?
Well, the first step is always to get clear on what matters to you.
Okay.
What are those non-negotiables that you're unwilling to compromise on? What are your top 3 goals right now?
Yeah.
What brings you joy and fulfillment?
Mm-hmm.
Once you have that all figured out,
Yeah.
those are your anchors, then you can start making decisions that align with your vision.
So it's like that compass to guide you
That's a great way to think about it.
through the decision-making wilderness.
Yes, exactly.
But even when we know what our priorities are, sometimes those tricky situations still pop up where we feel pressured to say yes.
You're exactly right.
What do we do then?
That's where communication comes in.
Okay.
The art of communication. We have to learn how to say no gracefully
Mm.
and effectively
Okay.
without burning bridges or, damaging those relationships.
All right, so let's dive into some of those communication strategies.
Oh,
How can we say no in a way that feels both honest and kind?
well, one helpful tip is to start by acknowledging the request
Oh.
and expressing appreciation for the opportunity.
Mm.
So you could say something like, I really appreciate you thinking of me, but unfortunately.
Okay.
Or, that sounds like a great project, but with my current commitments.
Yeah.
This shows that you're not dismissing them outright, but you are setting a boundary.
Right. So it's finding that balance between being respectful but also assertive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you can offer an alternative solution
Oh, okay.
if it's appropriate,
Yeah.
Maybe recommend someone else who would be a good fit or offer to help at a later date when
Yeah.
your schedule is more open.
That's a great point. So that shows that you're still willing to be sportive, but just in a way that respects your own limits.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And remember, you don't always have to give a detailed explanation.
that's true.
A simple, I'm not able to commit right now, is often enough.
Right, because sometimes we feel like we need to justify our no,
Yeah,
but it's okay to just state your decision and not over-explain.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if someone pushes back
Oh, yeah.
or tries to guilt you,
Uh-huh.
you have every right to stand your ground.
Mm-hmm.
Just reiterate no, I understand you're disappointed, but this is my decision.
It's a good reminder that we don't have to give in to pressure or
No.
manipulation.
Right.
We have the power to choose
Yes, you do.
how we spend our time and energy.
Absolutely.
This is all fantastic advice, but I think it's important to acknowledge that even with the best communication strategies, saying no can bring up a lot of different emotions,
Yeah,
especially guilt.
for sure.
How do we navigate that?
That's a great question,
Yeah.
and one that we will definitely dive into
Right?
right after a quick break. So stay with us.
We'll be right back. So we're back, and we're talking all about the guilt monster that comes along with saying no. And, those emotions, they're real, they're valid, but we don't have to let them completely control our decisions.
It's fascinating because guilt often stems from a misconception that our worth is tied to our ability to please others.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we worry that saying no is going to make us seem selfish or uncaring, when in reality it can often be quite the opposite.
Yeah, it's like we think that our value is tied up in our willingness to just be at everyone's beck and call.
Exactly. And that is just a recipe for burnout and resentment.
Yeah.
The truth is, setting healthy boundaries and prioritizing our well-being actually allows us to show up more authentically and generously
I love that.
for the people that we care about.
It's like a reframing of the whole concept.
Exactly.
Yeah, how can we start to kind of challenge those ingrained beliefs that we have and overcome those feelings of guilt?
One thing you can try is practicing self-compassion. So instead of beating yourself up for wanting to say no, acknowledge that it's a normal human response to feeling overwhelmed or overextended.
Okay.
You're not obligated to say yes to everything,
Yeah,
and it is okay to prioritize your own needs.
that's such a powerful reminder.
Yeah,
It's giving ourselves the same grace that we would give to our friends or
exactly.
our family.
And another key is that saying no doesn't mean that you're rejecting the person or the relationship.
Right.
It just means that you're declining that specific request at this time.
Such a crucial distinction.
And when we approach it with honesty and transparency, it actually strengthens our relationships because we're fostering trust
Yeah.
and mutual respect.
This reminded me of what we were talking about before, like that fear of damaging relationships by saying no. But you're saying it can actually do the opposite.
Absolutely. When we constantly say yes just out of obligation or fear, we're not being authentic.
Mm.
We're essentially hiding our true selves.
Yeah.
And that can lead to resentment, to misunderstandings, and strained relationships.
It's like we're building the relationship on a foundation of pretense
Yeah,
rather than genuine connection.
exactly. And when we're honest about our needs and our limits,
Yeah.
it allows for more open communication.
Mm.
And people see that we're not afraid to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
to say no when we need to. And that vulnerability can actually deepen our intimacy and trust.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a reminder that our true friends and our loved ones will respect our boundaries and appreciate our honesty.
Absolutely. And saying no isn't just about protecting ourselves.
Okay.
It's also about creating space for others to step up.
Well, that's an interesting angle. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. When we constantly say yes to everything,
Yeah.
we're actually preventing others from having the satisfaction of helping.
Oh,
So it's like we're robbing them of the opportunity to use their skills and talents.
that's a great point.
Mm.
It's like we're creating a dynamic where we're always the fixer
Exactly.
and everyone else is dependent on us.
Exactly. And that creates an imbalance
Yeah.
where one person is overburdened.
And the other person is undervalued.
So by saying no, we're actually empowering other people to step up and take initiative.
Exactly. It creates a more collaborative
And fulfilling
Exactly.
experience for everyone.
I know we've talked a lot about emotions and relationships,
Yeah.
but what about our goals and our values?
Oh, that's so important.
How do we factor those in?
One of the best tools for doing that
Okay.
is setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
What are you willing to do and what are you not willing to do?
So how do we actually set those boundaries and make sure that they are respected?
It starts with those non-negotiables,
Okay.
your core values and priorities. For some people, it might be spending time with their family
Mhm.
every Sunday. For other people, it's setting aside time for creativity or personal growth.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
like finding those sacred spaces that
Exactly.
nourish us and
Exactly.
align with what we really value.
And then you have to communicate them
Right.
to the people in your life.
Yeah. And that can be difficult.
It can be uncomfortable, especially if you're used to people-pleasing or avoiding conflict.
But you're not asking permission.
Yeah.
You're stating your needs, your expectations, and anyone who cares about you will respect that.
So it's really about understanding that healthy relationships are built on that mutual respect.
Absolutely.
And understand not one person giving up their needs to constantly please the other person.
And when you set boundaries, it creates a win-win situation.
Okay.
You protect your time and energy,
Yeah.
and the people around you get to experience the joy of contributing.
This has been so insightful.
Oh, good. I'm
I'm
relaxed.
starting to see the power of no in a whole new light.
Good.
It's not about being selfish or rejecting others. It's about honoring my own needs and values.
Absolutely. And the more we practice, the more empowered we'll feel
Yeah.
to create a life that's authentically our own.
One that's full of joy and purpose and connection.
Yeah.
All right, so we are back. And I think it's amazing how this simple idea of saying no can have such a huge impact on our lives. And we've talked about, all of the psychology behind it and how to communicate effectively and all of the emotions that come up.
Right. We've really tried to cover all of our bases.
But one of the most surprising things for me has been that saying no can actually improve our relationships,
Yeah, a lot of people don't expect that.
not damage them.
Right. It seems counterintuitive, but it really makes sense when you think about how when we are constantly saying yes out of obligation, we're not being our true selves.
Right. It's like we're trying to
Yeah.
be this perfect person,
Exactly.
this perfect friend, the perfect partner.
You're performing.
Yeah. And we lose ourselves.
Yeah. And that can actually create distance in our relationships.
Right. People can sense that.
Because they can tell that you're not being genuine,
Yeah.
and it can erode trust.
So by saying no
Mm-hmm.
and setting boundaries, we're actually inviting people to have a deeper, more meaningful connection.
Exactly. Because you're being honest.
And we're saying, this is who I am, this is what I value, and I trust that you're going to respect that.
Absolutely. And the people who are worth your time and energy will appreciate that honesty.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that healthy relationships are built on respect and understanding.
Right. And both people feeling like they can be themselves.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
no one is being taken advantage of.
Exactly. And, another thing about saying no is that it creates space for new things,
Oh, yeah. It's like we're making room in our lives.
for new opportunities.
Yeah, to be surprised.
Yes, exactly. When we're so busy and overcommitted, we just don't have that space.
It's like we can't even see those new opportunities because we're so busy doing all the things we already said yes to.
Right. And saying no can be so freeing.
Yeah.
It's about creating a life that you actually want,
That you're excited
a
about.
life that feels authentic
I love that.
and fulfilling.
This has been such an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like I have so many tools now to help me navigate all those tricky decisions
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
and to, make choices that are really aligned with what I want.
And remember, it's a journey.
Mm.
It takes practice.
Yeah.
And there will be times when you stumble.
Right.
But just be kind to yourself and keep learning.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is
Huh.
one question you'd like our listeners to think about?
Well, how about this? What is one thing that you've been saying yes to that you're now ready to start saying no to? It could be anything, a commitment, a relationship, a habit. It could be something small or it could be something big.
That's a great question.
I encourage you to try setting some boundaries and see what happens.
So well said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into saying no. And until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep saying yes to all the things that light you up.